Hello and welcome to another session of Musicians Speak with your host, Joseph Jelly. I have the opportunity to meet with new music creators of all genres, and I discuss their work. I'm really pleased to have pianist-composer Sylvie Courvoisier as my guest on the program today, where we will be discussing a range of topics, including her new release with Mary Halvorson. But before we have a chance to say hello to Sylvie, let's open up the program with her composition Éclat for Ornette, and that was her trio comprised of Kenny Wolfson on drums, with Drew Gress on bass, and of course, Sylvie Courvoisier on piano. We open the program with a composition by my guest Sylvie Courvoisier entitled Éclat for Ornette, from her release entitled De Gala, released on the Intact label with Drew Gress on bass and Kenny Wolfson on drums. You know, for the last 30 years or so, Sylvie has been at the forefront of the new improvisational scene, both in Europe and the US, with over 13 recordings as a leader and participating in over 40 additional recordings as a side woman. She has just completed a 2-week European tour with Mary Halvorson, as well as performances at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C., in commemoration of Duke Ellington. And that included other people like Jason Moran, Mary Halvorson, Wadada Leo Smith, among others. Hello, Sylvie. Welcome to Musicians Speak. How are you today?
I thank you for having me. I'm very happy to be here with you doing
Thank
this
you so
interview.
much. I'm glad to finally speak with you and appreciate your taking the time from what looks like a very busy schedule of upcoming projects, live performances in New York, and then you're off to Europe again. Sylvie, might you tell us a little bit about your early life in Lausanne, Switzerland, where you were born?
So I was born in Lausanne, Switzerland, 55 years ago. So yeah, so but I have dual nationality. I have a Swiss passport and American passport. So since probably I moved to New York in '98. And I think I have an American passport since 2008. So since Obama,
Uh,
voted for him, that was really nice.
and
And
what were the early years like for you in Lausanne?
oh, it was, I was raised in a little village outside of Lausanne. My father is an amateur jazz pianist, but he had a day job. And but I was playing in his band as a kid, singing, playing drums also, because we were doing weddings. So weekend we were doing a lot of weddings and private parties and stuff like that, and playing music in the house was always fun. It was nothing about learning. It was more like a game. And my father never really taught me how to play the piano or how to play drums. And when I was young, I was very extroverted, so I had no problem to sing. So I was singing in his band, and we were a big hit for the weddings, it was. And so I learned it like that. I never had really a teacher. And but when I was 6, I told my father I want to become a conductor and a pianist. And he told me, it's not a profession. Do that on your side. You can do the weddings, you have fun, but, I never thought it would be my profession. I always thought it would be my side, my
And
passion.
how old were you? What was the youngest age you began singing with your dad's band?
Oh, like I was probably 6.
Uh,
Yeah.
well, you know, the great bassist Charlie Hayden, his
Yeah.
mom and dad used to have a radio show. It was a country western radio show. And if you go back and do a little bit of research, there's a picture of Charlie Hayden with a suit on and a little bow tie. And he is singing at the age of 2 years old
Oh, wow.
on his mom and dad's radio show. And he was a regular performer by the age of 2 years old.
Oh, wow. No, I think I was much older. But my
Yeah.
mom was not very happy about that because I was coming home too late and I couldn't go, because, but wow, 2 is very early.
Yeah.
I was not 2 for sure.
Yeah.
I think more or less.
How old were you when you actually began studying the piano?
I mean, at 6, I really thought so. So my father said, "Okay, you can start the popular school it's a conservatory. It's a free conservatory. That's Switzerland for you, where you don't have to pay for classes." Because my mom was a waitress, my father was, like yeah, that they couldn't pay for classes, so there was this popular conservatory, and I started. I was probably 6 or 7, and I had a great teacher, classical teacher, but he passed away after a year from a
Uh,
motorcycle accident.
uh,
So after I didn't want it to take lessons. I said, oh, I like this guy. I didn't want it. So after maybe I did 2 years with him. I don't remember. And after this accident, I decided I just study by myself or with my dad. And a friend of my dad was his name is Gérald Lecote. He was more, he had more knowledge of the theory of the jazz. My father he cannot read music. He's just, he
Sure.
plays Dixieland, like he
Hmm.
swing,
Sure.
more old fashioned. And, and the friend, Gerald, the friend of my dad, he was more already like more advanced. He was playing more monk song and more stuff. I was more interested. So he was always hanging at our house and he taught me some stuff, like
I
I did
see.
harmony, chords,
Uh-huh.
and I took a few lessons. Every week he was coming and I was taking an informal lesson
Uh-huh.
with him.
Now, I have a sense that w when you were a young person, uh, many, many children in Switzerland were making music in the household, weren't they? They weren't doing it
Yes,
professionally, but it was considered part of your education. To,
totally,
yeah.
totally. I mean, every kid. I mean, one of my brother was playing trumpet, the other one accordion, and I was playing piano, and everybody had a piano in their house. My father was mad because I was playing too much piano, so he was locking the piano. So I went to the neighbor's house because they had a piano there. And I said, I'm going to play with a neighbor, but I say I didn't play with them. I was going to play the piano.
That's
So
funny.
yeah, everybody has a old upright in their house or something, like
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
because
music was so central to people's lives in the past, not as a profession, but as you didn't have a computer, you didn't have an iPhone, you didn't have all of those kinds of distractions. And
totally,
families would actually get together and they would, after dinner, maybe they would entertain
totally.
themselves or
But
they would sing.
we didn't have TV. So basically, my father was singing, where I was singing all the songs, and with him, with my mom, like to sing too, and we were like playing cards or playing music.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And how old were you when you said you were studying with this fellow who was coming to the house? When did you actually go to the Conservatory of Lausanne and began studying there?
Like professionally 18, but
I
I
see.
took private lesson with different people. But I entered the professional classical school when I was 18 or 17 and a half. I finished my bachelor. I finished early. I was in mathematics. My parents wanted me to really go university and study mathematics, but I decided to do only music. And my parents, when I was 17 and a half, they said, okay, so you take your own apartment and you see how if you can make it. We're not going
Wow.
to help you. So I said, okay,
Wow.
okay. And but now they're very happy.
Good, 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 good,
But
good.
it took them a while. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you went to the conservatory, were you studying classical piano?
I was studying classical piano at the conservatory but I did all the jazz camp you could imagine. Like when I was 16, I did 1 month jazz camp in Siena because a girlfriend was, so I went to Italy. I speak a little bit Italian, so my Italian became really well. And it was only Italian teacher, and at the time, I think it cost 100 Swiss francs, so about $100 for the whole month. And you had classes every day. You had
Wow.
workshop. It was fantastic. So I
Wow.
did that 16, 17, and 18,
Uh-huh.
the summer
Wow.
class. And I did also Montreux between 16 and 18 when I was at the university, at the gymnasium, we call that, for regular school. I was going every night to study. It was a non-professional school. I did a certificate of jazz, that you do. It's classic, like 3 days, 3 evening a week. And I was taking private piano lesson, and it was like a solfege, and we had rhythmical thing, and we had a couple lesson every week. So I did that for like 2 years, I think. And after I decided to become professional when I was 17 and a half, I wanted to do a professional school, and I had two options. So in Switzerland at that time, there was only the classical conservatory in Lausanne, or in Bern there was a jazz school. But the jazz school it was only guys and really bebop,
Yeah.
only bebop. I wanted to learn.
At that time, you were primarily listening to bebop, weren't you?
No,
Uh-huh.
I mean, when I was 16, I discovered Jerry Allen.
Uh-huh.
And I had a record shop next to my school, and I was always hanging there. And it was still like where the owner of the record shop was preparing me, some LPs, and I had a little booth I could go listen to after every day after school. I was going there, and he showed me Miles. He showed me, all these pianists, Keith Jarrett, Paul Bley,
Yeah.
and I was, yeah,
How about Cecil Taylor?
Cecil Taylor, of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
People don't realize this for our listeners. Sylvie was just saying that she would go to the record shops and there would be a booth there. In the olden days, you could go to record shops and you could audition a record that you were interested in purchasing. You wouldn't just purchase it. You would go there and you could listen to Miles or any number of people, and you might decide to buy it. Or in Sylvie's case, she was going there and listening to a lot of music that maybe was not so easily available.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah.
And the shop was called Birdland, and the guy was an American guy. And he was he knew like I was not going to buy any record. I didn't even have a record player in my parents' house. So I was just hanging there.
Yeah. Well, you know whose father also owned a record shop was Philip Glass.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, in Baltimore. His dad had a record shop, and he talks about very often about when new records would come in, usually of a contemporary nature, not particularly jazz, but when new records would come in, his father would always pull them aside, and they would take them home and listen to them.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So at the age of 17, you pretty much were committed that you were going to become a professional musician.
Yes.
And how old were you because you became very active. You had a lot of gigs in Switzerland. Why did you make the decision to come to the States?
I finished the conservatory in the classical conservatory in Lausanne. I was 21 or 20, yeah, something like that. But I had already a band that I formed in Siena with some Italian guys, and I love writing my own song. So I was doing a lot of stuff for Switzerland. And
Oh.
I decided when I was 22 or 23 that I had to move out of Switzerland to grow up,
Uh-huh.
to have more influence. I was playing with Michel Godard, that time was with French or Pierre Charial. So I had some influence also outside of Switzerland, but I felt I had to go out of my
Yeah.
hometown
Mm-hmm.
in
Mm-hmm.
order to become a better musician. And first I was thinking going to Amsterdam because I was playing with some Dutch guys with Tony Overwater and yeah. So basically I went there for like 1 or 2 months. It's always raining. I said I'm not going to move to Amsterdam. But I love Misha Mengelberg and
Yeah.
all these guys, all this school. And after I was thinking, oh, maybe I go to Paris, and I was working with Pierre Charial, and I
Mm-hmm.
was writing for the barrel organ. But I never really loved Paris, and I didn't feel like I found a community where I belong. And after in '95, I met Mark Feldman
Mm-hmm.
in a jazz meeting, Baden-Baden jazz meeting. And where I met also Joachim Kuhn, and we were like 12 musicians from all over the world recording for the Baden Jazz Radio. And and yeah, and Mark tell me, oh, you should come to New York for a couple months and see if you like it.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, I'll come for 2 months,
Yeah.
and after I stayed,
After that, you were hooked.
I was hooked. Yeah. And I found such a community in New York, great musician, who really, and I felt I belong here, even
Yeah.
if still have a huge French accent, but nobody cared. And
Yeah. Well, you know, for our listeners, over the years, as I've spoken to musicians who've moved to New York, one of the things that they emphasize quite often is the sense of community. And that's happening today. There's a very enthusiastic community of new music makers there who listen to each other, feed off of each other, get ideas from each other, do gigs with each other, and so forth and so on. But that has stretched all the ways back for many, many generations. New York has been one of the hot spots for people to come, and you might come from San Francisco or Seattle or someplace like that, but there was always a community of musicians that you could get involved in. Sylvie, I think it would be good to give our listeners another piece of music. But when I went to your solo release entitled To Be Otherwise, it was very difficult for me to make a choice. There's such a wide range of music for prepared piano, interior piano performance, and the wild virtuosity of twisting memories that almost sounds like a Nan Carroll player piano at times, and at other times very European in nature. And so I thought we could listen to the piece that is the most uncharacteristic for piano, and that is Frisking for Henry Cowell. Could you tell us a little bit about this piece before we give it a listen to?
You know what? I don't have the piece in mind because Frisk, like it's an improvised piece.
I see.
So I don't have it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Told me like Hotel Esmeralda, I would know which one, but Frisking.
Yeah.
So basically, and after I gave a title to this improvised piece afterwards.
Yeah. And that one particularly you dedicated to Henry Cowell.
Yeah.
So maybe, do you have anything you can tell us, our listeners, about how Henry Cowell's work influenced or informed you in some way?
It's more like all his preparation and his extended technique of all the instruments, how he, and yeah. So that's why, and also because when I did this recording in Germany, the piano got out of tune because pretty fast because they just moved the piano in this room, and so I decided on the spot to do much more preparation than what I was originally planned.
Yeah. Now, for some of our listeners, I'm sure they don't understand the term preparation. Sylvie's talking about preparation of the piano. Might you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, basically, is to prepare, like you can put some pieces, like John Cage is very famous for his preparation. He did all his sonata for prepared piano where he put screws in the piano, where you put screw between the strings. My preparation is much more simpler. It's more like instant preparation, so it means it's done on the moment, so I can unprepare a note and prepare. So I use magnet, I use a piece of wood, I use, like all this kind of stuff. So that's prepared.
Mm-hmm. So for our listeners, Sylvie was just referring to John Cage, who was very adventuresome in terms of augmenting, expanding, and changing the sound of the piano. So Sylvie is doing that in a more spontaneous manner, but Cage would plan out very carefully where he would insert objects within the strings of the piano, thus changing the sound of the piano, at times almost getting a gamelan kind of sound out of the piano. And he would do it with, as Sylvie was referring to, with screws, erasers, pencils, various kinds of objects like that. And if you've ever looked inside a beautiful grand piano, there's these landscape of beautiful strings inside of there. And that's what he was working with, the interior part and expanding the piano. We are going to listen to Sylvia's performance of Frisking, dedicated to Henry Cowell, the American composer. And this is from her release, To Be Otherwise. My name is Joseph Celli, and you're listening to Musicians Speak, a series of interviews and podcasts with musicians who are forging a new path in music. The complete series of interviews is available at my website located at josephcelli.org. We have just been listening to a 2024 solo piano release entitled To Be Otherwise by pianist-composer Sylvie Courvoisier. You can find this and additional releases of hers that are available at Bandcamp. I also would like to encourage you to visit Sylvie's website. It's located at www.sylviecourvoisier.com, where you can find a wide array of information, including upcoming performances, various projects, a discography, and much more information. Once again, that's located at www.sylvie, Sylvie, Courvoisier, COURVOISIER.com. Check it out. It's full of great information. Sylvie, who are some of the pianists that had the biggest impact on you?
There's so many pianists and also composers who had a lot of impact on me. I would say Paul Bley, Keith Jarrett, Bill Evans at the first, Thelonious Monk, Cecil Taylor, Jerry Allen, so many. But also the composer like Takemitsu, Sofia Gubaidulina, Olivier Messiaen, Ligeti. And I think I'm as much influenced with the classical contemporary music than jazz. So, of course, Herbie Hancock, there's so many great pianists.
Yeah. When you were in Switzerland, was there opportunity to hear any of these folks on tour, like Monk and so forth and so on?
No, I never saw Monk, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I did see Keith Jarrett.
Uh-huh.
I saw when I was young. I saw Misha Mengelberg live. I saw. I had this. I had a teacher at private lesson, Jacques Demière in Geneva, who's a great pianist also. And I saw Jerry Allen in Villisau when I was 16. I saw John Zorn with Naked City when I was 16. I said, "Wow, what was that?"
Well, I was very, very lucky because when I was growing up, I lived in a city that was only about an hour away from New York City. So I got a chance to hear Monk live many times. At one time, in the old Birdland, the way Birdland was set up, there were tables out in front. And the tables were very small. They were only big enough for an ashtray, one flower, and two drinks.
Right.
And then on the side of the bandstand, which was called the Peanut Gallery, if you weren't a drinker, and I was a kid, so I was young to get in there, it was called the Peanut Gallery, and there were rows of about 10 chairs, 5 rows. So you could be sitting almost close enough to touch Monk's shoulder.
Wow, amazing.
It was unbelievable. Unbelievable. One of the most profound experiences. But I had that experience many times. In all of the recordings of yous that I've heard have been very original music, your compositions, your improvisations, except for your recording of The Rite of Spring. Do you ever play any of the repertoire any longer as some of the classic pieces by Monk or any of the classical repertoire such as Ligeti any longer?
No, no, I
Hmm.
just do it in my house.
Yeah.
But I wanted to record at least one classical repertoire, and I think the big classical pianist. There is a lot of amazing big classical like Pierre Laurent Aimard. That's my favorite probably, and and or Martha Gurley. I mean, there's so many. I'm sorry, and so it. I never felt I had enough enough personality in the classical world, or
Yeah.
enough touch, or enough, legato, or pianissimo than all these guys. So I said, I will never record
Yeah.
the classical repertoire. But the Rite of Spring, I wanted to do it.
Yeah.
And I did it with Corey, who's a fantastic, Corey Smythe, who's a fantastic improviser, but especially a fantastic classical, super high level, who has a legato and a dynamic, like unbelievable.
Yeah, Sylvie's referring to a recording she made several years ago of Stravinsky's Rite of Spring, and it was a rendition for 2 pianos, and the other pianist was Corey Smythe. It's a pretty unbelievable interpretation. Sylvie, recently you released your third duo with guitarist composer Mary Halvorson, and previously you had Crop Circles that came out in 2017, and then you both released Searching for the Disappeared Hour in 2021, and just recently you released the new Tone Bells. What has been the
Bone Bell. Bone
Tone
Bell.
Bell? I'm sorry, correct. One
Yeah.
tone bell.
No, not tone, bone, like the bones.
Bone bell, right? One
Bone
bone
bells.
bell.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm sorry. How has the experience been working with Mary over this last almost 10 years?
I mean, Mary and I we are really close friends, so it's really great to work with her because when we go on tour, yeah, it's really like having another girlfriend. To tour with a girlfriend. It's like we like to go shopping. We're curious. So and to work with her is the same thing. She has this curiosity which I like, and I think it's very important in music. Is always to try some different stuff, and she's always ready to try. And and uh, and and I think Bone Bells is our maybe my favorite album these 3 albums because we have this history now of playing together, of trying stuff, and each piece on this album is very different from each other.
Yeah, it's an extraordinary recording. And as you go back over the period of time working with Mary, how has the music changed for the two of you?
I think it become more personal. It become more. I write really music for her, and she writes more music for me. And after we work together, so it becomes something pretty unique, I think.
Uh-huh.
The way she writes and the way I can harmonize her thing, and the way we bring, each of us brought 4 tunes in Bone Bells, but we do a lot of rehearsals. So
You would
so
do what?
music,
I'm sorry.
a
What?
lot of rehearsals.
You do a
So
lot of rehearsals.
yeah, and we decide together of the form of the where we improvise, and I say, can I harmonize this part? Can we do that? And I think the music become more complex maybe, but also more refined.
Yeah, it sounds very sophisticated. And how does it work out musically? Because you have very deep roots in the Western classical music scene as well as jazz. But Mary comes basically out of an improvised music, creative music background. How does that balance out between the two of you?
I mean, yeah, I like it because she surprised me sometimes, like with her pedal or she do something I don't expect, and I like that. And
Yeah.
but she's very, very open to say, hey, can you play pianissimo? Can we do all these dynamics things that she's not used to doing maybe in other bands? Because we treat this duo like really almost a classical contemporary duo, but we have more like songs and we have improvisation, but it's really a chamber duo
Yeah.
with all the dynamics are really super important, the articulation, and she's ready to go into the details. And I say, can you play a harmony? Can you go an octave higher? Can you play that super soft? And I think nowadays it's the younger generation, they're all doing that. I have this new group called Amalthea, uh, and they are all younger than me. Like it's Patricia Brennan on vibraphone, Thomas Morgan on bass, and Dan Weiss. And we just did a recording two weeks ago. And the same thing, I can really ask them to do all these dynamics and super detailed articulation, or write a lot of it. My music is pretty hard, so they practice, and
Yeah.
so. And I think that's Mary's younger than me, so it's nice. With my other band, I was always with older guys, and sometimes you couldn't be so picky about how the
Yeah.
articulation was.
Well, both you and Mary are very active as composers. When you're working together, is it a combination of composed pieces with improvisational aspects to it, or are you improvising in special sections? How do you work that out?
Yeah, usually we improvise in sections, like
Certain sections.
either on a form, either it's open, either like it's open, but one person has to bring back the theme under it slowly, or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's very precise which section. And here I improvise solo. Here she comes me the contrary, and
Well, what do you think that we close out the program with a cut from the brand new release, Bone Bell? Which cut do you suggest we give a listen to? It's your choice.
which tune?
Which tune?
Okay, maybe Esmeralda.
Esmeralda, cut number 2. Okay. Do you want to tell us anything about this?
Esmeralda, it's a sculpture that from Zitman, who is a Dutch artist, and it's a sculpture of a woman who looks like an alien, and she's pregnant. And I don't know, I like this image.
And in this piece, was this composed by you or Mary or
That's a composition by me. Yeah.
by you? Okay. Sylvie, thank you so very much for the extraordinary music making that you've given us. And thank you for the time today. Very much appreciated. It's
Thank you
been a
so much.
pleasure talking to you and, of course, listening to the music over the years. And I just want to remind our listeners that there's a wealth of information about Sylvie's activities at her website that you can find at www.sylviecourvoisier.com. And if you would like to hear additional interviews in this series with folks like Mary Halvorson, Bill Frisell, Wadada Leo Smith, and many, many others, please visit my website. And that's located at www.josephcelli.org. We're going to close out the program with the brand new release, the duo Bone Bells, with Sylvie Courvoisier and piano, Mary Halvorson on guitar. And we're going to hear Esmeralda.